Welcome to Learn the Word, the daily Bible teaching program of Calvary Chapel of Delta and Pastor Doug McLean. As we continue in Psalms 138 and 139, we're reminded that God knows us and He's with us. So let's jump in Psalm 138, verse 6, for part 2 of the message, Lord, it's between you and me.
Here, David's seeing that prophetically, that one day everyone will see the Lord and confess Him. Some on their way to judgment and some on their way to glory. Now, meanwhile, as we wait, verse 6 says, though the Lord is on high, yet He regards the lowly, but the proud He knows from afar. Super significant. Please understand that the proud cannot have a close connection with the Lord, because if they did, they would be humble. A proud person is somebody that thinks a lot of themselves, and they tend to arrive at that through self-deception, but also through a comparative study. They start to look at people and say, well, I'm better than him, and I'm better than him. It's not as bad as him. And they become very elevated in their opinion. As you draw near to the Lord, if you're really drawing near to the Lord, what you discover is you're not all that. You see how powerful and intelligent and loving and pure and holy and perfect He is in every way, and that makes you realize that you're really not any of those things. Remember Isaiah the prophet, when he saw the Lord high and lifted up, his response was, woe is me, because he realized he was so far from what God is. The word holy means to be set apart, separate, and that's God. There's nobody like Him. I want to be like Him. But as I draw near to Him, I realize I'm not. In other words, a person who draws near to the Lord will be humbled. A proud person cannot be in communion with God. If someone is proud, they can have knowledge about God, but he can't be in a close relationship with God. It is impossible. So if you know any proud people, you know how to pray for them. I love it that God pays attention to the lowly. One of the reasons I love it is because anybody can be lowly. It's your choice to be lowly. I may never be able to ascend on my own, but I can always descend. I might not ever have my master say, come take the higher seat, but I can always take the lower seat. I may never step up to a higher level, but I can always descend. I may never get a raise, but I can always give. I may never get a promotion, but I can always become a servant. And the Lord said, that's where I'll meet you. He regards the lowly. Love that. David continued in verse 7. He said, though I walk in the midst of trouble, you will revive me. You will stretch out your hand against the wrath of my enemies, and your right hand will save me. So David, confident, and notice he didn't get an exemption from trouble. He knew he'd walk through it. He was very confident that God would give him life, that God would work against his enemies, and that God would work in a coordinated, controlled, powerful way to save him. David knew these things about the Lord. And in verse 8, he said, the Lord will perfect that which concerns me. Your mercy, O Lord, endures forever. Do not forsake the works of your hands. So again, this is the truth of Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, where Paul said, Philippians 1:6, being confident of this very thing, that He who has begun a good work in me will be faithful to complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. He'll do it. What He started, He'll finish. I like 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 10. 1 Peter 5:10 says, may the God of all grace, who called us to His eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. So He's doing a work, and He's going to finish it. And He won't give up. He won't walk out. He won't turn away. He's working. If He began a work, He's going to finish it. Psalm 139, also a psalm of David. Psalm 139. He wrote this for the chief musician, a psalm of David. Begins this way, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it all together. The first thing I'd like you to note about this is it's a personal prayer. It's not a theological exposition. of the omniscience of God. It's his personal prayer. Yeah, he's saying, God, you're omniscient, but he's saying it in a very specific sense, not a general sense, not just, God, you know everything, but you know about me. You know me, David said. He realized that God knew about what he did every day, his common things, his casual things. He knew that God knew things about him that he didn't even think about. He said, you know my thoughts before they're even formed. The thoughts are just out there coming somewhere. They're on the way to my head, and you know about them before they even arrive. And then when those thoughts arrive, you know my ways. In other words, you know my manner of life. You know how I typically respond to things. And then before I say anything, Lord, you know those words before they even leave my lips. There's absolutely nothing about you that God doesn't know. So if you're hiding something from God, forget about it. He knows it all. In fact, Jesus said something very simple, very profound. Matthew 10, verse 30. Matthew 10, verse 30, he said, the very hairs of your head are numbered. The very hairs of your head are numbered. You know, the average person has between 90,000 and 150,000 hairs. I don't know who counted them, but it's true, and it's fascinating. If you look at it, the color of hair seems to be related to the number of hairs. Fascinating study. But you know what? This doesn't say that God knows the total number of your hairs. It says that he's numbered your hairs. So there is an 80,452. And when that one comes out and lands in the shower, the Lord knows the very one. So it's not that he just knows the total number, but he's got a number on each hair. That's way more. He knows way more about you than anyone else does, more than you do. David knew it, and he said to the Lord in verse 5, he said, you have hedged me behind and before and laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. So he knew the Lord's protection. He described it as a hedge behind him and before him. In other words, he had this sense that wherever I go, the Lord's already there, that he's gone before me. And wherever I go, he's right behind me. He's following up. He's protecting my vulnerable spots. And he says, Lord, your hand's on me. I sense that you're in touch with me. You're directing me. Your hand is on my life. And as he thought about all this, he said, I can't understand this. This is just marvelous. It is incomprehensible. It is extraordinary, and in a good way. It's like, I can't believe it, Lord. This is just amazing. Gets better. Verse 7. He said, where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell or Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. So he went from celebrating the Lord's omniscience to celebrating the Lord's omnipresence. It means he is everywhere. Omniscience, all-knowing. Omnipresent, he's everywhere. And again, very personal way, he knew that everywhere he went, the Lord was there. Verse 8, when I said hell, and then I said, or Sheol. That's the Hebrew word Sheol. That was the place of the dead. And prior to the cross, the righteous and the wicked dead went to a place called Sheol. And in Sheol, there were two different compartments. You can see about it in Luke 16. Jesus spoke of it. There was Abraham's bosom, where the righteous dead went, and they were comforted. And then there was a place of torment, where the unrighteous dead went, two different places. And so David is basically saying here, if I die, I'm not going to escape God's presence. That wherever I go, including death, God's there. I can't get away from him. Why would I want to? Well, Jonah wanted to. Remember? He tried to run away from God. He tried to get as far away from God as he could. And what did he discover? He had a whale of a time discovering it. That he couldn't get away from God, even if he went to the uttermost part of the sea. Again, in the ancient pagan world, they actually believed that gods were restricted to certain areas. You can see an example of it in 1 Kings chapter 20. Israel defeated the Syrians, and the Syrians reasoned, it says in 1 Kings 20, oh, their gods are the gods of the hills, but if we fight against them in the plain, surely we'll be stronger. So they tried to fight in the plain, and God gave Israel victory again to prove to the Syrians that he wasn't limited to geography. So very common thought. You study ancient religions, believing that gods were assigned to towns, to areas, to places. But David says it doesn't work that way. God's not limited. He knew that wherever he went, God was there. Now listen, it sounds like a pagan ancient idea, but it's actually a pagan present idea that slips into our Christian thinking. When you walk into a building and you say, oh, I'm at church, I have to behave differently now than I did before I went through the door. That's not a biblical idea. To think that God is more here than he was before you walked through the door. Where can I flee from your spirit? Where can I go from your presence? Everywhere I go, you're there. There should be a consistency in our lives. Wherever we go, there should be a sameness, because we realize God is everywhere. So he knew that God was ready to lead him. He says there in verse 11, he said, if I say, surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you. But the night shines as the day, the darkness and the light are both alike to you. So we have restrictions called darkness where we can't see, but it's never his restriction. Hebrews chapter 4:13 says that all things are naked and open to him to whom we must give an account. Hebrews 4:13. So God knows, he sees everything. His vision can't be hindered. Nothing is hidden from his sight. He sees absolutely everything that's happening inwardly, outwardly, your past, your future, everything that's going on around you. He sees it. Now, that should be a tremendous comfort to you. If it isn't, if it's disturbing to you, then that means there's something you need to work on, something you need to repent of or turn from, or maybe something you need to know about God that you don't know. But it's meant to be a tremendous comfort. It doesn't have to be terrifying. David continued in verse 13. He said to the Lord, for you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. So I hope you know God created you in your mother's womb. David's recognizing this. We know that we, each of us, began as a fertilized egg, and there was DNA that defined us, half of it from mom and half of it from dad. But where did they get that DNA? From their parents. And where did they get their DNA? From their parents. And it all kind of goes back to Adam. So in a sense, we were all created in Adam, because that genetic code was passed all the way down. All of humanity created in Adam. But also very specifically, the fertilized egg, that cell then divides and divides again and divides again. Then suddenly, those multiplying cells begin to take on specific functions. It's a process called differentiation. And some of those cells that are dividing become blood cells, some kidneys, some nerves, brain cells, spinal cord, heart cells, your gastrointestinal tract, arms, legs, eyes, ears, bones. Blood starts to pump, lungs form. And it's amazing. They all form in the right order at the right time, these complex, interdependent systems, so that after 9 months, you have a baby coming out. It is a process that scientists can observe, but they can't explain. Check it out. Look it up. They can observe it, but they can't explain. Why did that cell decide to become a blood cell? They all had the same DNA in them. How did they become specific? Why did they come in a certain order? Why were they suddenly coming together, forming this structure? Why? What's making this happen? So David knew. He recognized that God formed him. He recognized that God's involved with forming every person. And that means as you're sitting there, you need to remember and realize that God was involved in creating you. He knows what you're made of, and he knows what you're made for. As Paul said, you are his workmanship. The word workmanship in Ephesians 2, poema, you're his poem. Same word, poem. It's true. Since he created you for a purpose, that means you have value. And if you look at your life, you are evidence of the ability and the wisdom and the knowledge and really the genius of God. The Lord said to Jeremiah in Jeremiah 1, 4 through 5, Jeremiah 1, 4 to 5, he said, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. He had the information about Jeremiah before he actually carried out the plan. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And that's true for you too. God knew you and then formed you in your mother's womb. And David called it a secret process, and it really, in a sense, is still a secret process, a skillful process. He continued in verse 16. And he said, your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they are all written, the days fashioned for me, yet as yet there were none of them. So how much does God know? He knows everything. Does everybody agree? God knows everything? Which means if God knows everything, that means he can't learn, because he knows everything. Isaiah 46 verse 10, Isaiah 46:10 says that God can declare the end from the beginning. From the very beginning, God can declare the end. So he's not stuck in time like we are. He is present in the past, present in the present, and present in the future, all at the same time. He's outside of our time continuum. He knows everything right now. So he knows all of your days before you get one of them. And he's recorded them before you've experienced any of them. So, and it's not just that you're living on a script. It's not like your life is scripted and you don't have any control over it and you're just, programmed robot. It's not that. No, he's given you free will, and at the same time, he knows how you'll use your free will because he sees the end of it. So he knows how many days you have before you've had one of them, and he knows how you'll use them before you use one of them. And your life will never, ever, ever be a surprise to him. He'll never say, I can't believe he did that. Because he already knows you did that. Which is amazing if you sit alone with this thought and you think about it. That means that big mistake that happened in your life, that maybe even you're ashamed of, God knew about it when he called you, when you heard the gospel. He knew about it. You're not a disappointment to him. Ephesians 2:10. Ephesians 2:10 says, we are his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So he's created you, he's created things for you to do, and then it's your choice to do them. We get to walk them out. He knows how many days you have. He knows the choices you make. He always has. And in verse 17, this is so amazing. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would be more in number than the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. So notice precious thoughts. God said to his people in Jeremiah 29:11, a little bit later in history, Jeremiah 29:11, he said to them, for I know the thoughts I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. So he said to them, I have good intentions for you. And he says that to you too. He has good intentions for your life. David is saying essentially the same thing. Lord, your precious thoughts towards me. That word precious is saying you value me. You esteem me. You consider me precious. Somehow, Lord, you look at me as a treasure. And that's the way God looks at you. He treasures you. Now, he thinks so many of these precious thoughts towards you. David said if he could count them, they would be more in number than the sand. How much sand is there? Well, scientists estimate that there are 7 quintillion, 500 quadrillion grains of sand on the earth. I'll repeat that. 7 quintillion, 500 quadrillion grains of sand on the earth. That's 75 followed by 17 zeros. Now, I don't know if we can get our heads around that number, but if you live for 75 years, you'll live 2.3 billion seconds. I think I figured the math properly. If the Lord has more precious thoughts towards you than the sand, that would mean that if you live for 75 years, The Lord thinks of you more than 3 billion times every second for your entire life. That's what David said. He thinks about you a lot. A lot. He's always there. Always in touch. Always aware. If you're a believer, you'll never be separated from him. Never, ever. Why? Because he died for you and rose again. And he loved you so much, he took your place and suffered for your sin, knowing all your failures. And then he rose victorious so that you can live with him forever. He loves you so much. You say, well, I don't feel God near me. Listen, he's near you, allowing you to feel like you don't feel that he's there. But he's there. It's true. If you're a believer, you'll never be separated from him. He's thinking about you. Now, in verse 19, David's topic changes. His focus changes. Look at verse 19. It's kind of shocking to go from that to these next statements. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, you bloodthirsty men. For they speak against you wickedly. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate them, O Lord, who hate you? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them as my enemies. Wow. Look, the wicked are the guilty. The word wicked can be translated guilty. Bloodthirsty men are men that don't value life. Please notice David is speaking about God's enemies. He's speaking about those that hate God, who rebel against God. He's not talking in this section about his personal enemies. He's not talking about vengeance. He's expressing a loyalty to God and God's purposes. So David, in a sense here, taking sides. He's saying to the Lord in prayer, I'm with you, I'm standing with you, I'm waiting on you to take out the wicked. Lord, if they're your enemies, they're my enemies too. I'm with you, Lord. That's what he's saying. Now, when Jesus came, Jesus told us specifically in Matthew 5, verse 44, that we should love our enemies. Matthew 5, 44. In fact, Romans 5:10 says that he loved you when you were his enemy. You, when you were God's enemy. And remember, Jesus hanging on the cross said of those that were crucifying him, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And remember, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And that would mean he loved a world that was in rebellion towards him. So David didn't understand all that. I would say his expression of loyalty was commendable. We shouldn't try to be friends with the world, because if you try to be a friend with the world, you'll end up being an enemy of God. That's what James said in James 4:4. James 4:4. And remember, besides that, our enemies aren't people. Ephesians 6, verse 12, we battle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers and spiritual forces, wicked forces in heavenly places. We should abhor what is evil and cling to what is good. Romans 12, verse 9. So as an expression of loyalty, this is good, but we should love people and try to win them, to help them to see that they can be reconciled to God. So David ends it this way. Look at verse 23. He says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So he gets to the point at the end of the psalm, and he's so confident in the Lord's love and so secure in his presence, his omnipresence, his omniscience, his purpose for his life, that he just says, Lord, here I am, just search me out. Discern my motives. Examine what's going on. Look at the things that disturb me. See if there's anything wicked, anything that's not right in me that needs to be dealt with. And then, when you see that, Lord, lead me in the right way, the eternal way, your way. And that's a great prayer. You look at God having so many precious thoughts towards you, you can say, Lord, search me and know me. It's not like he's going to thump you. It's not like he's going to condemn you. He wants what's best for you. And it's a good prayer, because Jeremiah 17:9 says the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So I can think I'm right, but I'm wrong. So it's good to say, Lord, show me what's going on and lead me. Show me the way to go. And listen, again, remember, this is in the context that he already knows. You're not going to surprise him. He's aware of where you are, where you're headed, what's going on inside. He knows your thoughts before they're rolling around in there. He knows your words before they come out of your mouth. And he clearly loves you. He pays more attention to you than you do. He has good plans for you. And so when you pray this prayer, you're cooperating with him. You're saying, Lord, I know you know me. Now lead me in the right way. All those things that are messed up, Lord, I just trust you. Lead me in the right way. Good prayer to pray.
You've been listening to Learn the Word Radio in our verse-by-verse study through the Psalms. We're going to continue on into Psalm 140 tomorrow. But if you'd like to hear more teaching from Pastor Doug or learn more about us, just visit our website, learnthewordradio.com. That's learnthewordradio.com. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Learn the Word.